Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jeff Harrison, and you are with Your Personal Health with Dr. Burris and Dr. Kim. Welcome, you guys. How you doing?
Doing good.
Hey, how did the swim meet go last week? We missed you here on Your Personal Health.
It went well. Our girls qualified to be in the DEL finals, and so that's happening tomorrow, actually.
Fantastic. So what does that actually mean?
It means they're the top 16 in their event for the DEL, which is the Desert Empire League School District.
Or athletic district.
Athletic district, yeah.
So I'm just curious now, the kids are going back to school. What have you seen change with their behaviors, their personal health? Have you noticed anything different?
Definitely. When, they had pretty much adjusted to being at home and doing school at home. But what we've seen with them re-engaging a bit in person is an improvement in their mental state, and definitely being around other kids has both worn them out, made them more tired, but also I think improved their mood a bit. But it is interesting to see, like I see them sort of sleep longer on the weekends now. Like I notice the difference that being around other people actually takes a bit more out of them. And that's something I kind of wasn't expecting. That's interesting.
So do you look at those as positive or negative, or just, hey, this is part of the change again?
I look at it as it's neither positive nor negative. It's just something that has to be taken into account. Overall, I think it's a positive because we do need to be around other people. But it is good to keep in mind that as we re-engage, it is going to take a little bit of emotional energy, and it's okay to do it in a small steps way. You don't have to return to your pre-COVID social schedule day one.
So have you noticed? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Kim.
No, I was going to say, Dr. Burris is vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. Our 17-year-old is vaccinated. Our 15-year-old will start next week, I believe, and so that would leave our 10-year-old, and it allows us to be less worried as the kids go out and hang out with their friends after the swim meet at IHOP because they won their event, and so that just makes it easier for them to go themselves because they're not worried about the potential of spreading it or getting it. So
what do you think, and we've talked about this before on other programs, but what do you think the long-term effect of this whole pandemic and the COVID and the lockdowns and that type of thing, what do you think that's going to have on their long-term, not your children, but in general, the outlook that they have on life? Will they be more cautious with things? Will they live on the edge because they never know? What do you think?
I think this is going to be something that we discover over the years because I can make guesses based on other trauma that's occurred in people's lives. But in general, in childhood, when you have something fairly traumatic happen, it tends to threaten your sense of security, of normalcy. Much like a major loss in your family would, or a divorce, often these things sort of unsettle children a bit. Doesn't mean they can't be overcome, but I think living through a pandemic, having so much change, is going to really be a feature of this generation. And whether that means that they're more risk-taking because they sort of have given up on that idea that things are supposed to be a certain way and they're willing to take more chances, or whether they become more fearful and try to create more security for themselves, I think will depend on the person. But I think that our therapists are going to be in business for the next 60 years. It's a growth industry.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's something that we're all probably going to have to figure out how it affected us as we go.
You know,
And I think that I was going to say, Jeff, I think that there's more that the pandemic, in and of itself, not the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, it had touched a lot of different things. It's been weaponized and politicized. And so I think learning how to re-engage as a society in terms of how do you talk with people who have different views, but still you have to work with them, they're in your family, what happens. And so I think that is going to be something that it will be interesting to see how, as a society, we come back to that. Because I think a lot has. I don't think if it had been for the pandemic, many of the things would be going on today as they are.
Well, I'd love to get your feedback on this last piece about your family and how it's affected the kids just because they've gone back to school. But I'm curious with this whole, 14, 15 months of really reuniting family units in a way we've maybe not seen in a couple of generations. What do you guys take away from a positive that maybe that we had almost forgotten, or we realize now that how important it was?
For us, it really has been the ability to check in with our kids every day on their timeline. Because prior to COVID and being home all the time, we had a very busy schedule, and their schedules were very busy. And often what happened is I was checking in with my teenagers once or twice a week and kind of getting an idea of what was going on with them. But now, I see them multiple times a day. I sit and listen to them talk. I hear, I'm basically given a window into their lives that I wasn't before. And I think that's a gift. As it's important not to abuse it, that kind of access, and not to become like overly controlling because they're older. But at the same time, it's allowed me to get to know them as people in a way that I think if we had just been in the routine that we were before, I wouldn't have.
Yeah, I would say we gained a lot of time because there's the commute was not there, right? So to school, to sports, to this, to that. It's when school is done, they come out of their rooms, and sometimes at 3 p.m, we can watch a movie or something, or we connected with our kids. And I think that was good. We do have, one of our kids is a little more anxious, and I think for her, it allowed us to piecemeal her schooling, and in terms of addressing things kind of individually versus if they were at school, everything is mixed in, and dealing with school and sports and all that. It allowed us to really be able to compartmentalize things. And so I think for people who are introverted, who are very anxious or depressed, this one of the positives is you could address things in
One at a
serial
time,
fashion,
yeah.
rather than you're at school and let's deal with what's going on there. And then and selfishly for our other daughter, she's a junior and she's going to be a senior, and we only have a couple more years, is that we were able to spend a lot more time with her. And as parents, we're like, oh, that was really good. We really enjoyed, I think she did as well. And we got to, learn more about her. So, speaking purely from the parent side, I think I think it was good.
So do you think that helped in bonding at a different level in an age when maybe that's almost like where, excuse the expression, but the bird is starting to get ready to leave the nest? Do you think that changed your bonding with the children?
I do. I think that it allowed us to have lots of really great conversations where they sort of understand us better. We understand them better. We sort of refine each other's ideas. Our family loves to discuss like all sorts of topics. We'll range all the way from like quantum physics to outer space to politics to like, there's a sea slug that does this, we have great conversations, and I'm so grateful to watch them mature and grow up and to be part of it more than I might have if they were having those conversations, some of them with their friends and some with their teachers, and then only a few with me. So in a way, they may be tired of talking to mom, but like I tell them, they're going to be flown out of the house soon, and they'll have plenty of conversations with others, and I'll treasure this year.
Yeah, I think it's I liken it to like when you're dating someone and you're not, you're with them a lot, but then when you get married, you're constantly with them, and that's when you start learning there's some problems and you get to work through things. As your kids get busy, Dr. Burris said you only see them in just little spurts, but the pandemic forced us all to learn to live together more, and there were arguments, and it wasn't all roses, but working through all that, I think it did bring us closer, and we learned more about each other.
It's kind of like an extended RV trip.
RVing to the Grand Canyon and back, huh? And it only took 15 months.
Right.
Well, guys, what's that?
I said, are we there yet?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I think of how many articles in the past few decades I've read or watched something about the erosion of the American family unit. And this almost feels like, if you'll forgive the example, the comparison is, it's almost like a forest that has all the deciduous things on the ground, and eventually it's starting to choke out the growth. And so there's a forest fire we think is tragic, but yet all that new growth comes around, and all of a sudden we have a young, healthy, vibrant forest. And it feels like that's almost what's happened. Now, I don't have children. That's why I was digging into a little bit today, because you're probably a good representation, because I know you guys are always so busy and you've got kids that are so active. What has been the impact? And it feels like, or it sounds like, it has really helped everyone grow, because they're at a different maturity level than they were 15 months ago.
No,
that's true.
It's true, and I think we also need to recognize that there are probably families where getting that close together, there were probably more negatives in terms of abuse or depression. And so, I hope that through this, we can learn as a community, how can we help those parts of our society that were negatively affected by the pandemic. But I do agree with you. I think overall, the pandemic is not like, oh, it came out of left field. It happened almost 100 years ago. It's going to probably happen in another 100 years or sooner, hopefully later. But, it is, like you said, it's the cycle of what happens.
Well, guys, I just want to thank you for allowing me to dig in and kind of peel back the layers of your family and your family unit, and to find out, hey, not everything that happened during the pandemic was negative. And some of this, because we're talking about your personal health, a lot of it is emotional, it's spiritual, it's physical, and let's face it, it's mental. And we've talked about that on the show. And it sounds like you guys have come out as the family unit with less scarring than maybe we might have anticipated going in. So thank you very, very much.
It's funny. I think our kids will look back on this and not consider it a huge trauma.
Especially our 10-year-old.
Yeah. I just have one other question. Sometimes we think about things of we've compressed time into, more into less. And I'm just curious now, because of the fact that if we thought about the average time we were spending, as you said, you were checking in with your teenager once or twice a week, and now you're checking in with them sometimes daily, several times a day. What do you think that's done as far as compressing? Has it compressed, months into weeks? Has it compressed years into months? What do you think? Is it giving you more time, but you've done it over a shorter period of time?
Well, I feel like it's it's changed the amount of time I was spending with my kids per day. I think prior to COVID, we were probably on the high end, honestly, because I tried to do about 15 to 30 minutes a day with each kid. And the average for a working parent, I think, is 4 or 7 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just being around them, but that's like actually having conversation. And we're now at probably, with our older two, somewhere in the range of 30 to 60 minutes a day. It's still our 10-year-old, the conversations are all about his interests. So I don't talk much. I just listen. But that's okay. He still gets listened to. So I think it's more, if you do the math, I've probably got an extra, I've like tripled my time with my kids at least. So it's given me an extra 3 years with him, really.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I don't know if most people would think about it like that. They're just, I've heard some parents who have, multiple kids or teach them at home, the whole thing. They're going, I can't wait for the kids to get back to school. And yet that in itself, after 15 months, that almost could be a traumatic episode, because now it's like you walk in and like, I really wanted this, but wow, it's really quiet in here. Did I really want that much quiet? And it's almost a traumatic event. So there may be an adjustment really for the adults, not so much the kids, because they're going back to their friends in school, right?
For some kids, it's going to be great. And for other kids, it's not. So I think that's good to remember. That's not just one experience. For me, I love having my alone time at home.
Calgon, take me away.
Sad for a while. But for some kids, going back to school is really stressful, whether it's because they're not in a place where they have a lot of friends, or school is stressful for other reasons.
Yeah, I mean, and I can tell you we didn't realize how much we had to wash the dishes, and how much, when you're living almost 24/7, and with kids and everyone, you just create more dirt and more cleaning up, and so it probably will loosen up a little bit in that sense, because but then in the other sense, they're going to have to relearn how to make their own lunches, because while we're home, we have to eat, so they'll eat what we eat. But now that school's starting, they're going to have to make their lunches before they go to school. And
I love it. Well, guys, hey, thank you very much. And again, let me thank you for letting us peel that layer back on the personal lives of Dr. Kim and Dr. Burris and your family. Really appreciate that. And yes, I would say, hey, you're not the, extreme one way or the other family, but it's nice to take a look at it and say, wow, it wasn't always bad. There were some really good takeaways here. And now it'd be nice, as you say, you're not going back to that pre-COVID pace, because you've experienced this, and like there are going to be some things like, hey, you know what? I don't know if I really want to change that. Let's not have 5 nights a week of sporting or after school activities. 3's enough. And that still generates the activities, the personal activities that you guys come to enjoy and the kids have come to enjoy. So any last thoughts on that before we let you go today?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think really putting some thought into it, and as you start to fill up your schedule again, if it starts to feel a little overwhelming, it's okay to say no.
Yeah. Do you think that's and again, not to really go down another rabbit hole, but do you think it does help both the child and the parent to set some boundaries, and it's okay to say no, that they're not involved in soccer and t-ball and this, that, and the other? Next thing you know, they're just they're full on, and there really is no downtime.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that this has taught us, is that downtime is valuable and is just as important as their other activities. So just as I don't want them to only be studying all day long, I don't also want them only to be playing video games, or only to be in the room reading. It's good to keep that balance in mind. And we're not perfect at it. We're definitely still working on it, but the more you pay attention to it, the closer it'll get to a balance that works.
Fantastic. Dr. Kim, any last words?
Nope. She's the words of wisdom.
All right, guys. Well, have a great weekend. And again, make sure to join us every week. That's 3:00 for the latest COVID update. And yes, there still is a pandemic out there. It's not over. There are some places in the world that are still dealing with it. And it's nice to stay on top of it. Even though in this show, the COVID-19 update, we're really focusing on Riverside County, specifically Coachella Valley, how it's impacting things, the open rates and things of that nature. And then join us right here at around 3:15 for your personal health, where we talk about things like this, that maybe you wish you could sit down with your doctor and have that conversation. This is where it can happen. So again, thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Bye-bye.